Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. For those of you that are looking to learn how to save information or data like app variables and page variables to local device storage using Appgyver so that you can actually access this information after closing the application, stay tuned. I'm going to be covering how to do that in today's video. Now, before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. Now, I'm going to have a couple of resources in the description, so there are going to be links to other videos, links to this page here, which I'll be referencing in the video. So feel free to check that out if you're having any questions or as you're following along with this video. Now, if you've looked at my other Appgyver tutorial videos, you'll have noticed that we've discussed things like variables, formulas, things of that nature. But one thing that you'll notice is app variables, they don't save when the application is closed. So I'll be able to show you an example here in a second. But what we're doing today is we're showing you how to keep variables that persist essentially after the application is closed and reopened, but that are stored locally. That way you can access this offline. And I'm going to be using this productivity app as an example. I'll have a link in the description where I actually make this application. But right now we're just going to show how to save a data variable specifically. So over here on the right hand side, I'm mirroring my phone so that you can see the Appgyver preview app in action. And then I have the same application over here on this side. So you'll see if we're on this application here and we go to see my list, the letter C shows up right here. And essentially if we were to go back and then open the productivity app again and we go to see my list, that letter is still there. Now, if this were a page variable, I'll show you what essentially this would do. So if we go to this to-do option 2 and we chose an app variable instead of a page variable, and then the save button, let's just say, for this, we actually won't need to save the data because it'll save as we're typing. So now let's go over to the to-do list page, and this will be the same app variable for to-do 2. And we will click save. So now I'm going to show you the difference. If I put the number 1 here, and I put the number 2 here, and I'll click save next to each of them. And remember, the save button on the second one doesn't really do anything, but just clicked it anyway. You'll see the variables here persist. Now, if I were to back out of the application, which is the same as closing it in the preview app from what I've seen, and now I go to see my list, you'll see the number 1 is still there, but the number 2 is gone. So the app variable is deleted when the application's closed. So the local storage is really the only way to go for this. So we're going to walk through how to do this in today's video. So I'm going to show you what I've done here and how I've kind of set this application up first. So on this page here, we will get to it in a second. This is basically just our to-do list. And on this page here, we have a title and text. So you can just drag them over just like this. And I have those dragged over here, and you can edit the content on the right. And then what I did was I dragged over one of my favorite components, which is the row. And then from here, all you do is drag your button on the right and your input field on the left. So I dragged over a button here, and then I put an input field here. And then if you would like to, you can actually select the row in the tree over here and go to layout, and you can adjust the size so that you can have a larger or smaller button compared to the input field. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete that, so you can follow those steps to structure this and, again, adjust the layouts to make it see or look like whatever it is you want it to. So I have this set up now. Now we're going to walk through the logic and what we need to actually save this here. So we have this save button, and then we have the to-do field. So what I've done here is the to-do field itself, which again is this input field. I have gone to the variables slider, and for app variables, you can ignore all of these. We're just focusing on to-do 1. So basically you can click add app variable, type in to-do 1, and click save. That's all you need to do. So I'm going to remove it, and again, I'll just click save, and you can just see again, it's just to-do 1 right here. So you'll put the label, which is basically just this text up here, And the value, you will select this, go to data variables, app variables, and to do 1. Now, once you've done this, you're going to go to your button, and it's going to get a little bit more complicated. So you'll notice that these are data records and a dialog. So for the data record, we actually need to go create a data variable. And you'll notice that this is what I've used for API records in the past. So how to basically submit API calls. For this, we're actually going to use on-device storage. So if you click Add Data Resource, you'll name your resource ID, you'll give it a description, and then you will add a property name. And then you'll just click plus once you've added in your property name. Make sure it has valid characters. If it has invalid characters, it won't let you add it. And then you'll just click Save Data Resource. Now, I'm not going to get into setting up a schema here because often the schemas can get complicated, especially when you're doing API calls. For example, if I had a schema with multiple variables, if the users didn't have the text here, here, and here, then the variables on the next screen would be erased. So for example, if I put a value here, here, and here, and then you click see the list and the value showed up, if I go back here and I put in only a value here, but nothing in these two, once I clicked this, these two values would be erased. I'm not sure if it does that with client-side storage, but as the API calls can get a little confusing, I'm just going to show you what I've done to set this up. So my resource ID is 1, description is 1, and then the ID is included by default, and I just put first to do, and that's it. So I didn't adjust property types. I just typed in first to do here, clicked plus, and it added it. So we are going to go ahead and close this. Now, when you add a data resource, you need to add the data variable so it's accessible on the page. So you can click the slider, click data variables, and then when you click add data variable, you'll select the data variable here. Now you'll notice it adds an extra 1 to the end. Don't worry about that. That's not a problem. And then once you've added it there, we're going to go to our Save button, and we'll expand this option here. Now yours by default will have component tap. So we're basically going to show you what I've done, and then we're going to work through it together on this next button. So the first option, you'll see we have data resource, just the data resource name as 1. And then the ID is just the ID for that resource. So it's .id. We'll walk through this shortly. And then the record is this first to do. So the record is basically saying we're using the data resource 1. We're using the ID so that it can identify it. And then we're using or updating this record. So pretty straightforward. And this again is we're basically updating the record first to do, which you remember we just looked at, and we're updating it with the app variable to do 1. Now what I've done is I've also added create record. So when we look at the output here, you'll notice output 1 is the response, output 2 is the error. So if this works, we're going to get a toast message, which is just a pop-up that says updated. If it doesn't work, we're going to create a record. So we're going to assume a record does not already exist. And you'll notice this looks oddly similar. It's just data resource, so the same one. It's just 1. And then first to do is the app variable to do. Then we will go over to the to-do list. Now on this to-do list, you'll see that this label, which I've just dragged over this checkbox here, it's just the formula for data variable first to do. So you can click on I'll actually walk you through how to get to the formula screen. So you can click on the label and we'll click formula. You can click in the box and go to data variables. And you'll notice you'll have data, and then in parentheses, it's that data variable. And you'll have 0, 0 dot whatever you called yours, and 0 dot ID. And then the more data variables and resources you add, the more will show up here. Now, if yours don't show up in this screen, remember that to get them to show up, you have to go to data variables in this variable slider and make sure to click add and add your data variable. So if you remember when I was talking about the schemas and how they can get confusing, this is basically part of the schema. So you have your data variable, the ID, and first to do. So first to do is essentially going to be we'll call it your data variable, or the variable that's where your information that you're saving is being stored. So you can just click save here, and then you've basically seen this in action. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work through the last two options on this to-do list to actually do it from scratch. So in this box here, we're going to assign the variable to the app variable to do to, and we'll click save. And then that's all we're changing for this input field. Now, the cool thing about this is as it's typing, it's automatically saving the app variable. So we don't need to add a button to save the app variable and a button to save the variable, or we don't need to make the logic more complex. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the save button. And right here is where we're going to duplicate this logic. So we're going to update record, create record, and toast message. So we are going to go over here to the left-hand side, and we're going to drag over update record, create record, and then the toast message. So that is usually right here. Now, I learned some of this from this Appgyver tutorial here. I'll put a link to this in the description. This is a method because theirs was covering how to save settings for text. So this is something that I'm going to be kind of expanding on here. And I'd just like to give credit to tutorials when other people have already done some of the work. So we have our data record here, and we remember this top one is successful. And the bottom one is basically if it fails, we want to create the record. And the toast message, you would just click the message and we'll just click success, or we'll type in success. So for the record, because I only have one data resource, it defaults to 1. And I'll need to specify things here. So what we need to do now is we need to click on the data tab, and we're going to add a data resource, device storage. We're going to add the number 2. We'll put the description as 2. And then we'll put second to do. Click plus and save data resource. And then we're going to create the third one. So we'll just name this 3. Description will just be 3, and we'll put third to do. So we're following some kind of a naming convention here. So we've added these. So we'll click save. And if you start to get confused after you've been doing this for a while, one thing, again, just don't forget to double check your steps from the beginning, because one thing I notice I always do is I forget to add the data variables here, and I get confused later on. And again, don't get confused when it adds the number 1 afterwards. It's not messing up anything. So we've added our data resources. They're now available and visible. So we are going to make sure this saves to the to-do to app variable. And then we're going to make sure that this updates the correct data resource. So we're going to select the second one and click Save. And then we're going to scroll down and choose the ID. This one was a little confusing for me at first. So we're just going to go to the Formula tab, go to Data Variables, and we're going to choose the ID for the second one that we just made. And again, the ID is created by default, not something that you need to make. Then you need to choose your record. So typically this will already have the brackets, so we're just going to click on Custom Object, and you'll see second to do is automatically brought up, which is the data record essentially. So when we click on the little X there and we go to Data Variables, we can go to App Variable, and I've already created the app variable to do to, and you can click Save, and you'll see it's basically this, the relationship we'll see in a second. So if you don't know how to create the app variable, just click this slider, you'll be in app variables by default, or you should be. Click add app variable and just name it and click save, and it'll automatically add it down here. So once we have this set up, you should see that it'll show custom object still. But if you want to see what that looks like, if you click anything over here once you've already set it up, so let's just say we chose a data variable, When you click the formula, when you go back in the second time around, it'll show you the formula for whatever work you've just done. So what we just did is we said second to do, which is something we just created, is going to be the app variable for to do. So effectively what we've done is we've set up the update record. Now we need to set up the create record. So we'll click in the resource name and we'll change it to 2. And then in the custom object, we will go to our data variables and we will go to app variable and we will go to do 2 and click save. And then again, you have your success message. Now we will connect this top one here because this is the success as well. So the cool thing about how this is set up is when the tap occurs for this button, it's going to update the record. If that works, it'll say success. If it doesn't work, it'll create the record and then say success. Now, this is the failure node, so you know that when you click this and choose outputs, you'll see what happens here. So you could drag over a toast message if you wanted. It's entirely up to you how you want to do that, and you could connect this to the failure message, but I'm going to skip that step here. So we're going to repeat the process one more time. So at this point, you should have already created your data variables. You can create one more page variable here and name it 3 or whatever you prefer. And then here, we are going to get started. So we're going to go to properties and we're going to make sure this is assigned to app variable to do 3 and click save. And then when we click on our save button, we're going to update the logic. So I'm just going to delete this and we'll go through this together. So again, what we're doing is we're going to scroll through and we are going to choose update record. We're going to choose create record. And then we are going to get our toast message, which I always scroll past. So sometimes it seems to stick when you try to drag it. There we go. So if you remember the flow, we'll connect the tap. If it's successful, give it the toast message. If this one's successful, give it the toast message. And if it doesn't update the record, then create a new one. So we'll move a little quicker on this. So we're going to click update record. We will choose the data resource number 3. And then create record. So we're going to make sure this all looks good. So we need to double check and make sure that the ID has been properly selected. We'll scroll down and get the ID for number 3. And then we have to choose the custom object. So if the interface changes at any point, if you click on this, and we'll go ahead and select the app variable, but sometimes the interface can change as they do updates to the app. So if you need to, you can just click on the binding here and choose the formula option, and you should be able to enter in this formula. So in brackets, this is going to be the name of whatever that record is in the data resource that you make. And then this will be the app variable to do 3 in brackets. Only thing separating them is a semicolon and a space. So that has been set, as we can see here. So we're going to go to create record. We'll choose the correct data resource, which should be number 3. Record custom object. We already know what to do here. We're going to go to use the formulas this time just to try something different. And we're just going to do app variable for to do 3 and click save and save. So if you remember correctly, the only other thing that we have to do is update things on this page here. So we will choose, you'll bring over some more checkboxes, and the label you'll see here is to do 2. We're going to change it to the data variable. So we'll select this option, go back to select binding type and choose formula. Here we will delete everything and go to data variables, and you'll notice all of a sudden we're missing some. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we add those data variables again. So we'll go to add, and we'll just select the 2 that we don't already have. And now you'll see when we go to the label, select binding, when we go to formula, we can go to data variable and 2, and you'll see we'll just click on second to do. And then we will go to label, data variable, and we will go to third to do and save. So we're going to go through and test everything out. So here we're going to type in this, and we'll put is, and we will finish up with it with an exclamation point. So I'll click save, save, and save. And then I did not add the success toast message. You can tell when I click on this, we don't get it, but on this one we do. Not a problem, doesn't matter either way. Now we're going to click see my list, and you'll see this is it. Now it's time for the final test. So first we need to make sure that this updates the records, because right now all we've tested is that it actually creates them. So we're going to save, 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 and we'll click see my list. So now we see that the records are updating. So the final test, if you remember, is to close the application, and then we'll reopen it and see if the list is still intact, which it is. So the variables are saving. So at this point, you should be able to download this application as an APK file or publish to the Play Store or the Apple App Store. Make sure you do your testing. Make sure when you're making your own applications that you're following any and all applicable guidelines, whether they're legal regulations or whatever is needed for wherever you plan to release it. So do your own research. Make sure that you're following the right rules, guidelines, laws, restrictions, etc. But I hope that this video was helpful for you all in showing you how to actually save these as a local variable. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.